Deep beneath the sunlit courtyards of Egypt's elite, a very different world existed. The royal dungeon was a stone-carved pit, an inescapable holding cell for those who fell out of favor. Above ground, one man held absolute authority. Pharaoh's word was law, and his wrath could strip the highest-ranking officials of their status in an instant. That wrath eventually fell upon two specific men, the chief butler and the chief baker. For offending their lord, they were stripped of their titles and thrown down into the ward of the captain of the guard. Waiting in that dark ward was Joseph. He was a Hebrew who had been kidnapped from his homeland and sold. Now, despite being an innocent man, he was ordered to serve these two disgraced royal officers. When doing the right thing only leads to a darker prison cell, and you are forced to serve the very system that holds you captive, how do you maintain your faith? The three men remained locked together in the ward for a full season. Then, the silence of the prison broke. On the exact same night, both the butler and the baker experienced incredibly vivid, highly specific dreams. The next morning, Joseph walked in and immediately noticed a change. He did not ignore his prisoners. He looked closely at their faces, saw their heavy expressions, and asked why they looked so sad. The officers were trapped. They knew they had received a supernatural message, but locked away in the dungeon, they had no access to the royal courts. There were no Egyptian magicians or wise men available to tell them what the dreams meant. Joseph's response cut straight through their panic. He told them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, I pray you." With those few words, Joseph shifted the power dynamic of the room. He stripped the authority of destiny away from Pharaoh's magicians and placed it entirely in the hands of divine sovereignty. The chief butler spoke first. He described a vine with 3 branches that quickly budded, blossomed, and produced clusters of ripe grapes. In his dream, he took those grapes, pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup right back into Pharaoh's hand. Joseph delivered the meaning without hesitation. The 3 branches represented a ticking clock of 3 days. Within exactly 3 days, Pharaoh would lift up the butler's head and restore him to his exact former position as cupbearer. Then Joseph made a rare, deeply human plea. He asked the butler to remember him when he was restored. He explained he was stolen from the land of the Hebrews and had done absolutely nothing to deserve the dungeon. He simply wanted to go home. Hearing this highly favorable interpretation, the chief baker stepped forward. He was emboldened, eager to share what seemed like an identical dream. This diagram shows the structural symmetry between the 2 dreams. Instead of 3 branches, the baker saw 3 white baskets of baked goods on his head. But instead of delivering them, birds came down and ate the food right out of the top basket. Joseph's second interpretation offered no comfort. The 3 baskets also meant 3 days. But within those 3 days, Pharaoh would lift the baker's head entirely off his body, hang him on a tree, and the birds would eat his flesh. 2 dreams with identical starting points led to absolute opposite ends, one to life and one to death. Joseph delivered the exact truth of the divine decree, refusing to offer false comfort or flattery to a royal official. The 3-day clock rapidly expired. The 3rd day arrived, which happened to be Pharaoh's birthday, and the king threw a massive feast for all his servants. Just as Joseph had spoken, the first prophecy was flawlessly executed. The chief butler was restored to his position, placing the cup into Pharaoh's hand. The second prophecy was fulfilled with identical precision. The chief baker was hanged. Yet Genesis chapter 40 ends with a brutal human failure. Verse 23 states, "Yet did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgot him." The contrast is sharp. The divine word proved to be 100% accurate, missing no detail of life or death. The gratitude of a saved human being, however, failed the moment he stepped out of the prison. True resilience requires enduring the silence that follows. Sometimes you do everything right. You speak the truth, you help those in need, and the world still leaves you in the dark. Faith is built in those quiet, agonizing